Tell me about the screening of the film called The Birth of a Nation by D.W. Griffith.
It was unfortunate for our country that the first movie ever screened in the White House was a racist movie by a racist Democratic president.
There is a scene in The Birth of a Nation that audiences never saw. It was filmed, it was finished, then someone removed it before the film reached the public. That is the strange part. This was a 3-hour movie that called Black Americans dangerous, put white actors in blackface, and made heroes out of the Ku Klux Klan. All of that stayed in. One single moment was pulled out. It lasted seconds. It involved a black woman, a white woman, and an insult. And the reason it was cut is the most honest thing about the entire film. $3 a day scroll to the bottom of the cast list for The Birth of a Nation. You will pass Lillian Gish, Mae Marsh, and Henry B. Walthall. You will also pass future directors John Ford and Raoul Walsh, both appearing there as young men. Then one name appears that feels different from every other name around it. Madame Sul-Te-Wan. She was born Nellie Crawford in Louisville, Kentucky, in 1873. Her parents had once been enslaved. Her mother took in laundry to earn money, and some of that laundry belonged to actresses at the Buckingham Theater in Louisville. So the little girl who carried clean clothes through the stage door sometimes found herself allowed to stay and watch the show. That stage door changed her life. 2 actresses, Mary Anderson and Fanny Davenport, saw something in her. They arranged an audition for her at a talent contest in that same theater. Nellie won. From there, a career began that would stretch across most of 70 years. That was how she entered the world of performance. A black child in Kentucky in the 1880s carried laundry into a theater, caught the attention of 2 white actresses, and was given a chance that almost no one in her position ever received. More than 40 years later, that same performer was in Los Angeles. Her husband had abandoned her 3 weeks after the birth of their 3rd son. Money had run out. Booking agencies, according to historian Donald Bogle, refused to handle black performers. The stage door that had once opened for her now seemed closed again. Then D.W. Griffith entered her story.
Well, it has stood the test of time. Still considered to be the best picture that was ever made. Must make you feel proud.
Well, thank you very much for that. If I thought you really thought it was the best picture ever made, I would be tempted to be a little proud. But I don't know. You never get into those things, you know. You never get into those things, the things that you expect to get more to get.
One version says she wrote to him. Another says she caught his attention on the street through the way she dressed. Both versions have survived, and neither can be fully confirmed. What can be confirmed is what happened next. Griffith hired her for $3 a day to appear in The Birth of a Nation, which was still being filmed under its original title, The Klansman. That small daily wage led to something historic. Once the work became formalized at $25 a week, it became the first film contract ever signed by a black woman in Hollywood. By most accounts, it was also the first signed by any black performer in Hollywood. So she was there. That is the fact at the center of this story. She was inside the production while one of the most influential and poisonous films in American history was being made. Many claims about that film have been repeated, exaggerated, softened, or twisted over time. Yet this part remains solid. A black woman helped make the film that would help revive the Ku Klux Klan. Now the question becomes clear. What did that film actually say? What the film says. The content has to be stated plainly, because many discussions of The Birth of a Nation spend long stretches praising its technique while avoiding the message sitting inside it. The Birth of a Nation is a 3-hour epic told across 12 reels. It was adapted from Thomas Dixon Jr.'s 1905 novel and play The Klansman. Its second half argues that Reconstruction became a disaster because black Americans took part in politics. It presents the Ku Klux Klan as the heroic force that restored order. The central black characters are played by white actors in blackface. The intertitles use racist language to describe black people as dangerous and out of control. The climax shows the Klan riding to rescue a white family from black militia. Griffith films that ride with rushing cuts, rising speed, and the cavalry charge rhythm he had spent years developing. That is why the film matters so much. Its craft was powerful. Its message was racist. Those two forces moved together. The film did not simply contain propaganda. Its greatest technical achievements helped carry that propaganda into the minds of a huge audience. Griffith shot the film in a little over 2 months in late 1914. Most of the filming happened in California. Battle scenes were staged in Griffith Park and other Los Angeles locations. After shooting ended, he spent about 3 months editing more than 1,500 separate shots. At that time, such a number was almost unthinkable. The budget passed $100,000, making it the most expensive American film produced up to that point. The film opened at Clunes Auditorium in Los Angeles in February 1915. On March 3, 1915, it opened at the Liberty Theater in New York, where it ran twice a day for almost a year. Its final earnings are usually estimated somewhere between $50 million and $100 million. That made it the first American blockbuster. For more than 20 years, no other film came close to its scale of success. To understand the shock of that moment, remember what cinema looked like in 1915. A normal feature film often ran 4 or 5 reels and lasted under an hour. Griffith made a 3-hour production with an intermission. Joseph Carl Breil composed an original orchestral score for it. Tickets sold for $2, roughly 10 times the usual price of a cinema seat. That price was part of the design. The film was sold as an event. People wore evening clothes to attend. It played in legitimate theaters instead of Nickelodeons. Audiences were invited to treat it as culture, spectacle, and history all at once. That decision shaped cinema for decades. Every major roadshow release that followed carried something from that model. The Birth of a Nation taught Hollywood that a film could be sold with the weight of a grand public occasion. Then the film received the kind of publicity no studio could buy. The White House. On February 18, 1915, The Birth of a Nation was screened in the East Room of the White House for President Woodrow Wilson. That screening became one of the most powerful publicity moments in American film history. It happened because Thomas Dixon had known Wilson at Johns Hopkins and used that connection to get the film before the president. The film also quoted Wilson directly. Several intertitles used excerpts from his History of the American People, with credit shown on screen. Those passages described the Klan in a way that suited Griffith's purpose. A famous line has often been attributed to Wilson after the screening. According to that story, he said the film was like writing history with lightning, and that his only regret was that it was all so terribly true. That quotation is disputed. It seems to have come from Dixon rather than from anyone proven to be in the room. The White House later stepped back from any clear endorsement. Still, one fact carried enormous force. The President of the United States watched the film inside the White House. Promoters used that fact again and again. Whether the endorsement was real or manufactured, the association with Wilson gave the film a power that ordinary advertising could never create. The country receiving the film was already moving in the direction the film wanted. Wilson had resegregated substantial parts of the federal civil service after taking office in 1913. Those changes reversed arrangements that had stood since Reconstruction. So the Birth of a Nation did not arrive in a neutral America. It arrived in a country where the federal government itself was already restoring racial separation. The timing also matters for another reason. In August 1915, 6 months after the New York premiere, a Jewish factory superintendent named Leo Frank was taken from a prison in Georgia by a mob of prominent local men and lynched. His case had shaken the state for 2 years. The men who carried out the lynching called themselves the Knights of Mary Fagin. Several of those men later joined the group that climbed Stone Mountain with William Simmons in November. That was the atmosphere around the film. The Birth of a Nation entered a country where racial terror, political nostalgia, and public spectacle were already feeding each other. Soon, those forces gathered on a mountain in Georgia. Thanksgiving night, Stone Mountain. The original Ku Klux Klan had been crushed in the 1870s. By 1915, it belonged to the past. It had no living national structure and no active membership system. Then, William Joseph Simmons brought it back. On Thanksgiving night in November 1915, Simmons took 15 men to the top of Stone Mountain in Georgia. He built an altar. He burned a cross. Then he declared the Klan reborn. The timing was deliberate. He chose that moment to connect the rebirth of the Klan with the Atlanta opening of The Birth of a Nation. After that, the film became one of his strongest recruiting tools. Klan organizers screened it and placed newspaper advertising beside it. In some towns, membership drives were held outside cinemas where the film was playing. Klansmen in robes rode horses through the streets to promote both the movie and the movement. The growth shows what followed. The revived Klan had roughly 5,000 members in 1920. By the middle of the 1920s, estimates placed its membership in the millions, with figures around 4 million commonly cited. It placed members in public office. It gained power inside state legislatures. In 1925, tens of thousands of hooded men marched down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington. A motion picture supplied one powerful part of that rise. Other forces carried much of the weight. Post-war nativism, the Great Migration, labor conflict, and fear over immigration all helped create the conditions. Yet, the Birth of a Nation gave the revived Klan a heroic image at the exact moment William Simmons was rebuilding it. That connection was made by Simmons himself. He chose the date. He used the film. He understood what it could do. The second Klan also took shape in ways the film helped define. The first Klan had belonged mostly to the rural South of the late 1860s and 1870s. The revived order spread far beyond that world. It became powerful in Indiana, Oregon, Colorado, Georgia, and many other places. It moved through cities as well as rural areas. Its public image also came from performance. White robes and hoods became its uniform. Mounted parades turned intimidation into public theater. Cross-burning became its most recognizable symbol. That last symbol is especially important. Cross-burning had no real basis in the original Klan. It came from Thomas Dixon's fiction and Griffith's film. Simmons lit a cross on Stone Mountain because he had read it and seen it. A hate movement took its most famous image from a work of fiction, then carried that image into real life. But the film did not move through America without resistance. The protests, nobody mentions. A common version of this story makes it sound as if America simply accepted the birth of a nation in 1915. That version leaves out the people who fought it from the beginning. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People was only 6 years old when the film appeared. The campaign against the birth of a nation became the first major national fight in the organization's history. The NAACP organized in city after city. It pressured censorship boards. It helped get the film banned in several American cities, including Chicago, Denver, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and Minneapolis. In other places, the organization forced cuts Boston became one of the fiercest battlegrounds. William Monroe Trotter, a black newspaper editor and civil rights campaigner, led the opposition there. The fight produced mass demonstrations and arrests. It pushed the issue all the way to the Massachusetts state legislature. The resistance continued beyond Boston. Riots broke out in several cities. Protests remained outside theaters for months. Viewers were not the only people responding. Black artists answered the film through cinema itself. The Lincoln Motion Picture Company was founded in 1916. Oscar Micheaux, who became the most prolific black filmmaker of the era, made Within Our Gates in 1920. That film answered Griffith directly. Its lynching sequence reversed the moral logic of The Birth of a Nation and forced audiences to face racial violence from the other side of the screen. Within Our Gates faced censorship as well. For decades, people believed the film had been lost. Then a print was eventually found in Spain. So the popular framing is false. A large and organized part of America fought the birth of a nation from the week it opened. People risked arrest, public anger, and political pressure. In several cities, they won. Nationally, the film still made a fortune. Yet the fight left behind one lasting result. In 1915, the NAACP was still a small organization with limited reach. The campaign against the birth of a nation forced it to build a broader network. It strengthened local branches and sharpened tactics that would matter for the next half-century. Petitions, local pressure, legal challenges, and coordinated publicity became part of its working method. The film helped rebuild the Ku Klux Klan. In a slower and less direct way, the fight against that film also helped build the organization that would one day help defeat what the Klan stood for. What was cut? This brings us back to the woman placed near the bottom of the cast list. Because the most revealing part of Madame Sul-Te-Wan's role in that film is the part the public never saw. Griffith had written a real scene for her. Scholars of the period describe the intended moment this way. She was meant to play a wealthy black woman walking through town, showing her clothes, her money, and her status. Then a white woman insults her. The wealthy black woman answers the insult by spitting in the white woman's face. Now, place that scene inside the film around it. The Birth of a Nation was built on the idea that black political and social progress would lead to disaster. Inside that same film, Griffith shot a moment where a prosperous black woman refuses to be humiliated by a white woman. She answers with contempt, openly and directly. That moment never reached the public. The censors removed it. Nobody has ever proven which censorship board made the decision, and no surviving record gives the official reason. The result is all we have. Madame Sul-Te-Wan appears in the finished film as an uncredited extra. In the edit, she was reduced from a woman with power to a face in a crowd. Without meaning to, the finished film did to her character exactly what its larger message wanted to do to black life on screen. That is what makes the cut so revealing. In that instance, the censors were not protecting audiences from racism. The final film had racial hatred running through nearly all of its 3-hour length, and it still passed. The scene they removed was the only moment in that Klan epic where a black character gained power over a white one. The Klan riding in as heroes was acceptable. A black woman answering an insult was the part they could not allow. $25 a week. Griffith kept her close after that. He hired her again for Intolerance in 1916, the enormous and ruinously expensive picture he made after The Birth of a Nation. Many people read that film as his answer to the criticism that followed his earlier work. Around that time, Madame Sul-Te-Wan's place in his company became formal. She received a weekly contract for $25. That contract is the reason she belongs in film history, so it needs to be understood with care. $25 a week in 1916 was a working wage. Griffith was getting a capable performer for very little money. Still, the contract gave her access, and access mattered more than almost anything in that world. A black woman under contract to the biggest director in America could be called for work. She could enter the studio system. She had a place in an industry where Los Angeles booking agencies refused to put black performers on their books at all. She used that opening for 43 more years. Her film career ran from 1915 to 1958. She appeared as Esmeralda in Tarzan of the Apes in 1918. She appeared in King Kong in 1933 as a native handmaiden. In 1937, she played Tituba in Maid of Salem. Later credits included Carmen Jones and Tarzan and The Trappers. Two of her sons, Odell and Honest Conley, also became actors and appeared beside her. The roles were almost always limited. She played maids, enslaved women, voodoo practitioners, and native women. That was the work Hollywood offered. She accepted those roles for decades because the other option was usually no screen work at all. She died on February 1, 1959, in Woodland Hills at the age of 85. Later, she was inducted into the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame. Her career becomes even more striking when placed against the wider timeline. Hattie McDaniel became the first black performer to win an Academy Award for Gone with the Wind in 1940. That happened 25 years after Madame Sul-Te-Wan signed her contract, and the award came for the same broad category of role Hollywood had been giving black women for decades. Sidney Poitier was born in 1927, 12 years after The Birth of a Nation opened. Madame Sul-Te-Wan was working in Hollywood before either of those milestones could fully exist. She was still working in 1958, 1 year before her death. Her name deserves its own chapter. Nellie Crawford, later Nellie Conley after marriage, became Madame Sul-Te-Wan at some point in her career. Nobody has ever established the exact moment she chose it, and nobody knows the full reason behind it. At times, she hinted that her father had been a Hindu minister. The name can sound Asian, Native American, or deliberately hard to place. Historians of black cinema usually understand it as a strategic invention. Charlene Regester, who studied this period, has argued that the different explanations may all belong together. The name may have suggested a mixed background. It may have created mystery. It may also have helped her move through a market that tried to narrow every black performer before the audition even began. Think about the calculation behind that choice. A black woman in Hollywood in the 1910s understood that the surname she was born with could lock her into a very small range of parts. So she built a stage name with enough uncertainty to widen the field, even slightly. Before that, she had billed herself as Creole Nell. Earlier still, she had run her own theatrical companies on the East Coast. One was the Black 400, which employed 16 performers and 12 musicians. She also ran a minstrel company. That history matters. It shows a woman who understood the market from the inside. By around 1900, she knew what audiences wanted, what managers would buy, and what a black woman had to do to keep working. She was not discovered by Griffith. She had been running businesses for about 15 years before he ever saw her. The Black 400 toured the East Coast successfully enough to support 28 people. That single detail should have kept her far away from the footnotes. A black woman in the 1890s who founded and ran a touring theatrical company of that size was doing something difficult even by modern standards. Then she lost it. When her husband left, she lost the company along with nearly everything else. Kentucky records of her life describe a period where she had to rely on charity, to feed her children. From that point to a Hollywood studio contract took only a few years. What was actually real now? We can return to the premise of this documentary and to the kind of claim that often circulates around the birth of a nation. There is no reliable evidence that any performer's distress in the film was genuine rather than acted. Lillian Gish's terror in the sequence where Elsie Stoneman is trapped in Silas Lynch's house is a performance. It is also a superb one. Gish wrote 2 memoirs and gave interviews across much of the 20th century, and she never described that scene as real terror. Mae Marsh's death scene as Flora Cameron belongs in the same category. It was acting. If a woman had truly been terrorized on that set, Gish likely would have said so. She lived until 1993, spoke about Griffith constantly, and was not always gentle when she did. Yet there was something real inside that film. The real thing was not hidden in a scene. It lived in the business arrangement that made the scene possible. Madame Sul-Te-Wan stood on the set of one of the most effective pieces of white supremacist propaganda ever produced in the United States because she had children to feed, no husband beside her, no money behind her, and an industry that refused to represent her. Griffith wrote her a scene where she spat in a white woman's face. Someone cut it. She still took the $3 a day. Then she turned that small wage into a contract, and the contract into 43 more years of work. That fact is harder to look at than any staged terror. Consider what her working days must have looked like. White actors were being made up in blackface to portray black people as rapists and fools, with drunkenness folded into the same ugly caricature. She was placed in crowd scenes that framed black people as a mob. Every day, she needed the money because her boys were at home. No surviving interview records what she thought about it. She worked for Griffith again the next year. She worked in the industry for 4 more decades. Publicly, she said nothing about what that set had felt like. Her silence reads best, as the silence of a woman who understood the cost of speaking. There is another layer here, and it is deeply strange. Griffith made a film arguing that black Americans were unfit for public life. In the same period, he personally employed the first black woman ever placed under contract in Hollywood. He hired her more than once, and accounts from the period suggest they remained on good terms. Both facts belong to the same man and the same year. A clean explanation would be dishonest. Some people reach for the idea that Griffith carried the views of his time and his Kentucky upbringing. His father had been a Confederate colonel, and the film grew from that inherited worldview. There is some truth in that explanation. It still does not carry the full weight of what happened. The film was released into a country where people immediately told him what it was doing. Thousands of Americans protested. Organized criticism came loudly in 1915. Griffith knew. He made intolerance in response, then spent 33 more years avoiding the simple admission the film demanded from him. A person may inherit the first frame of his thinking. What he does after the world answers him belongs to him. 1993. The Birth of a Nation was selected for the United States National Film Registry in 1992 and 1993 as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. That wording has to carry a heavy burden. The film is still taught because the history of narrative cinema cannot be explained without it. Its use of cross-cutting, close-up, moving camera work, large crowd scenes, and action pacing helped build the grammar of modern film. At the same time, it is widely described as one of the most racist films ever made by a major studio. Griffith spent the rest of his life answering for it. Intolerance, released in 1916, was a massive financial disaster, and his production company never fully recovered. The film is often read as his answer to the accusations against him. In 1919, he also produced Broken Blossoms, which placed a sympathetic, non-white character at its center. He never apologized for The Birth of a Nation. He never disowned it. Griffith died in 1948 in a Hollywood hotel, largely alone. He had not made a film in 17 years. The industry he helped create had moved on without him. In 1953, the Directors Guild of America named its highest honor the D.W. Griffith Award. The Guild presented it under that name for 46 years. In 1999, the name was removed because The Birth of a Nation had helped foster intolerable racial stereotypes. Today, it is simply the DGA Lifetime Achievement Award. One of the best summaries of the film came from a viewer rather than a scholar. The viewer recognized the astonishing craft, the force of the filmmaking, and the way the racism overwhelms the second half. The film should be remembered with both truths held in view: its technical genius and its abhorrence. That is the right position, and it is an uncomfortable one to hold. So this is what this documentary wants you to take away from a film released 111 years ago. The Birth of a Nation was the most technically advanced film anyone had made at the time. The President of the United States watched it. It earned somewhere between $50 million and $100 million. It became a recruiting tool for a terrorist organization that grew from about 5,000 members to something close to 4 million inside a decade. Resistance came immediately. The NAACP fought it. William Monroe Trotter challenged it in Boston. Censorship boards in multiple cities pushed against it. Black filmmakers went out and made their own answers to it. Then, buried in the cast list, uncredited, is the woman at the center of this story. She was born to formerly enslaved parents in Kentucky in 1873. She learned about theater by delivering her mother's laundry to a stage door. 2 white actresses liked her enough to arrange a talent contest for her, and she won it. She later ran her own theatrical company, employing 28 people. After her husband abandoned her, she was left with children to feed and no money. Every booking agency in Los Angeles refused to represent her because of her color. So she wrote to Griffith and asked for work. She got $3 a day. Then she got $25 a week. Then she received a contract no black woman performer had been given before in Hollywood. After that came 43 years of work, mostly as maids, enslaved women, handmaidens, and other roles shaped by the limits of the industry. She took the parts because she wanted to work. Her one substantial scene was the only moment in that entire 3-hour film where a black character held power over a white one. It was cut before audiences could see it. Nobody has ever found the footage. She died in 1959. In 1986, the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame inducted her, 27 years after her death. Her name sits near the bottom of the cast list, after John Ford and before Raoul Walsh. Different sources spell it slightly differently. It appears inside the film that helped rebuild the Ku Klux Klan. That is the real thing inside The Birth of a Nation. A woman was there, working for $3 a day, inside the machine itself. From that place, she gained a contract no black performer like her had received before. She built a career that lasted until the year before she died. She also had a scene with power, and someone destroyed it before the public could see it. Her name is at the bottom of the list. It always was. That is why the list should be read all the way down.